welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm reviewing Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd. And that title, if you're wondering about it, it's taken from Gray's Elegy in a Country Churchyard, a line from that poem. I had wondered about the title for years and had never looked it up, so if you're wondering, that's where it came from. So I just finished this book this morning, and I'm just going to give some thoughts on it. It is a story. It was published in 1874. It's the first of Thomas Hardy's Wessex novels, as they're considered, and it's the first Thomas Hardy novel that I've completed. I had mentioned one of my last videos. It started one of his other ones, but didn't make it through. Had better success with this one. I liked it a lot more. Got through it quickly. It was just so much easier to get through, and I enjoyed it. I have one or two little criticisms, but for the most part, I really liked it. It is an ancient, simple story, but, that doesn't matter as long as it's told well. Sometimes those ancient stories are the best. So if you hate love triangles, like a lot of people do, this is not a love triangle. It is a square with three men in love with the same woman. Three completely different men from totally different kind of parts of life, all in love with a very singular, independent, proud, beautiful woman. And it's really just the evolution of her character through the romances with these, or sort of romances with these three different men. So you have the hero of the story, the humble Gabriel Oak, who is a farmer. He was working to become an independent farmer, but then he had misfortune and he has to go and become a hired hand again. So he's actually working for the woman that he loves on her farm, Bathsheba Everdeen, which is quite a name. I never really got over that name all the way through the book. Every time they were like, "Oh, Bathsheba," I was kind of like, it's a rough name. But anyway, so he's working for her, and he has to kind of watch all these things play out in her life with her different adventures. So the farmer next door to her farm, Farmer Boldwood, becomes infatuated with her with this passionate, just fanaticism almost. It's also interesting because there's these three totally different guys from totally different walks of life, and the way that they approach her and approach romance is also completely different in each of their cases. And something that I also noticed was that of the three men, they all, in the beginning, loved her purely for her beauty, because that's all they knew about her. Her beauty and her independent spirit was clear to everybody as well. But ultimately, they all were like, "Oh, I'm in love with her," before they really knew anything about her. Something that I loved about the book, and of course is really the whole point in the end, is only one of them continued to love her, truly love her, when he knew her. When he knew her as a person and not just as a face, as a body. And had a genuine friendship as well as romance. And that love that came from coming to know each other well and building a strong friendship is, of course, the love that endures in the end. And that's something that I appreciated about the book. The contrast between the passing of infatuated, passionate love that comes from the surface only just because people are exciting and attractive, and the deep, steady love of a friend and a good person. So that's kind of the takeaway. Again, it's a simple story, but it's still interesting. Those stories of romance and drama are always interesting. There's a lot of drama, but I feel like it's so well balanced with the background. These are simple, rural, country people. And I think, apart from everything that's happening, really my favorite thing about the book, and I think that Thomas Hardy's real heart here is in showing the countryside of England and this generation to generation farming and laboring. He has these beautiful scenes of just the countryside, just scenes of farming life, long dialogues with just the villagers and the people who live there. We get a very good understanding of these people and their way of life in just a little bit of time. There's passages where you feel like the joy and excitement and festivity of the sheep shearing and harvest time. And it's really celebrating something that has been lost. I think Thomas Hardy, he wrote in his foreword a little bit about that, how this love of the soil that bound generation to generation seamlessly, where you have farmers or farms and buildings that have been there for 400 years and are the same and still fit into the landscape, and people are still using them the same way because generation has just followed generation with this love. And that's something that has really been lost. So he purposely wrote about it to preserve it in that way as best he could. And that's kind of the highlight for me from the book, because again, I love the story, I love the characters, watching them develop and all the different drama, but it was largely a book like a lot of others as far as the drama and the way things play out. I love a book that comes full circle. We have some action and developments at the very beginning of the book that are going to come all the way back around at the end. The following of these different suitors. It's an old story. It's simple. Nothing is really too surprising, but it's told against this background in a interesting way that keeps you reading, keeps you going. I really liked it. Enjoyed it. It's not going to be on my top 10 or anything like that, but it was good. I really liked the character, particularly of Gabriel Oak, but watching the other characters, really all the other characters were interesting. And I liked kind of the play between, you kind of know what's going to happen, but you don't know the way that everything is going to happen. And, there's the sergeant character who's kind of the villain of the story. And yet, when you kind of see him as the villain, then you're surprised when, Farmer Boldwood starts acting, in my mind, kind of like a villain too, trying to force Bathsheba to marry him from a sense of obligation, just being very ungenerous and pushy with her. And you're like, oh, well, he's a villain too. I didn't really see that, So, I don't know. Watching the different developments was definitely interesting. But again, I think the main special thing about this book is just in the landscape and in the setting. And I think most people reading it would probably agree with me, but I don't know. Let me know if you have thoughts, if you've read it. My one kind of problem with the book is not so much, actually, that the author inserts himself a lot, because he does. He has a lot of interjection about what's going on. You'll be reading and the author will really just kind of start talking about what's happening, or he'll make observation on a practice or a country phrase, or he'll talk about the nature of women or the nature of men or the nature of love, and he'll kind of just go on these tangents. But I felt like that was his style, and within the book it's set up to be that way from the start. It didn't feel like it was an inconsistency where he was poking himself in where he didn't mean to be. It was it was intentional, and it was something that was established from the beginning. So that's not my favorite style, but I didn't mind it too much because it was consistent. It was something he did from the beginning. That's just the way this book is written. And again, not my favorite, but it's nice to have variety. So I didn't mind that so much. The thing that I minded about the writing, if I have a complaint, because the writing is good, but if I have a complaint, it's that at times he overcomplicated what could have been simple. I love for an author to have a wide vocabulary. The wider the vocabulary an author has, the more likely they are to be able to choose the perfect word for every situation. And the right word is what an author should always be going for. The right word, not necessarily the most impressive or complicated sounding word. I don't mind authors use complicated words if they are suitable, but it really felt like at times he would use all these obscure, overcomplex words to say something that could have been said much more simply and shorter. So he would kind of go on and say the same thing in like 5 different, very complex ways to get at an idea that was actually simple, that he could have communicated easily in a more understandable and straightforward way. And I'm not sure if maybe that's just his style, the writing style that he just embraced. It felt at times like he was choosing to be complicated when he could have been simple, which I think is a real failing in an author because an author's first priority should be clarity. And it just felt like he overcomplicated. And again, I'm not arguing against complex words. I always appreciate when an author believes in the reader, believes that the reader will be able to be up for it, so to speak. I appreciate that. I hate oversimplified stuff where it sounds like the writer is assuming that their readers are stupid or something like that. I hate that. But to overcomplicate is a problem as well. So you need that balance of just caring about clearly and, beautifully, however, communicating your thought. And sometimes I felt like his thoughts, his beautiful thoughts were clouded by just using weird, obscure words. And again, maybe it was just the time, but I've definitely read books from the same time that were a lot more clear. And I'm not talking either about the dialect that he uses for like the villagers and stuff. That feels completely authentic, and I really appreciate that. I'm not talking about that at all, but just in his way of writing and kind of speaking to the reader, things got a little convoluted at times, I felt. But overall, the story still moved along really well. It didn't bog me down to where I was like, oh, I don't want to read this. It wasn't like that at all. It moved along well. It could have just moved along a little better, I think. But great story, great book. Again, not my favorite in the world, but really good. I would definitely recommend it. And so yeah, those are my thoughts on Far from the Madding Crowd. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.